I'm trying to think of the guy's name that planted through Ark. Aaron. Is
he like in Northridge, I think, or something up there?
Recording? Okay.
I think so. He's
his
a
name.
he's a worship guy. He's like,
Wasn't it the washing machine story where he did like a 5-on-5 at Ark one year?
Yes.
And he was sharing a kind of a testimony of like I'm probably getting the story wrong, but like I think he paid for somebody's like coin laundry.
Yeah.
And then it turned into like that person got saved, and then now they have like this coin laundry ministry. And he's like, and the whole point is like share Jesus any way you can.
Yeah. It's like one of that. I remember I was in seminary. It was so cheesy. It was there was a missions and evangelism class, and literally one of the illustrations or one of the things in there was like, if you want to reach people, you can do these types of outreaches. And one of the outreaches was a washing, laundry, whatever outreach. And the script was like, here's what you say. Let me, you help them, and you go, let me share with you about someone that could cleanse the sin of your soul. I was like, are we really gonna?
It sounds like one of those tracks that you leave.
Yeah, it's like, or you go to someone and you give them, like, a light bulb, and it's like, let me tell you about the light of the world. It was kind of like that, but it was
makes sense
powerful.
though. You have a captive audience, right? They're stuck there for an hour waiting for.
They're not going anywhere else.
Yeah, I love that.
How long did you live there though? Or when
I was 10, and then we moved to Colorado.
Do you have family still in California?
Yeah.
Any of
mostly Northern California.
They're all moving to Tennessee.
So they really are. I feel like there's going to be eventually a reverse. There's going to be like a reverse migration.
A return to California?
I think so too. Like I've often wondered, would I ever go back? And part of me is like, yes, I totally would. I feel like honestly, missionally, I mean, I feel like all of the people that probably need to stay and like grit it out, grind it out, are the ones that are all moving out. But I don't know. I got out of there. I got out of Egypt.
There are parts of California.
You have but you went there.
Yeah,
it's different when you're from.
No, there. I mean, honestly, that was whenever we were praying, when we were planting, we were like, okay, we could go to Dallas, we could go to OC. I was like, or Laguna Hills, whatever. There was a couple different places, and then San Francisco. And
I'll never forget that burrito. What was that place called on Mission Ave?
La Taqueria.
Oh my gosh, it's the best.
It's a great burrito, and that's part of why the Lord called us there. It was a season for that burrito, and they did the burrito was done like El Dorado style.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was gorgeous.
It's basically
there was that one in the Mission, but then Taqueria.
Did you ever hear about that?
It's
Taqueria?
like they had like a Korean twist to it, but then they would also add tater tots to it.
Sounds
with bulgogi. How you say? Is it bulgogi?
Bulgogi.
Oh yeah,
bulgogi?
yeah, beef, whatever. Yeah.
It was fantastic.
Yeah, I think California is it's a tough place, man, in our nation.
But I will say this though, we've been talking about this a lot because now obviously pastoring in Nashville. I actually think that it was, I don't want to say easier.
Really?
Because that's not, it's just, it was different. But San Francisco, when people got saved, came to our church, they were like committed, all in, and they were there like every Sunday.
Because it's not the norm to go to church.
Yeah.
It's not the norm by no means to serve at church.
Yeah.
So if you go to church twice a month, you're saved and you're locked in. And you don't have the options of churches like you do in the Bible Belt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you kind of have like a church, almost like what do you call it? Like almost like in the South, it's like a pride thing. It's like, I know God already, and it's totally different. You have this
it up.
It's,
this.
Yeah.
it is totally different. It's a different experience.
It is.
You have
Nashville is
I feel
the Bible Belt.
I feel the consumer Christianity way more.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
Where we're at. It's like,
and
there's great options everywhere.
San Francisco, if someone wasn't at your church one Sunday, you just thought they're probably in Napa, they're at Tahoe, they're in Yosemite, at one of these amazing places to go on a weekend. In Nashville, if someone's not at your church on a Sunday,
right?
They could be out of town. They also could be at the other church they go to.
It's crazy.
Yeah, there's one lady, and we can talk about some more meaningful things. But there was this one lady that we had a youth night, and she's so sweet. I love her, but she comes up to me and she's like, "Hey, I want to introduce myself. My husband and I and our daughter, we've been coming to church. A couple times. She was like, we have like 3 churches we go to. And I was like, yeah. I was like, I just wanted to talk to you about that. And that's why I came tonight. And I was like straight face, and her eyes got big. I was like, I'm just messing with you. But they end up, now they're like all in, they're fully committed. But that's a lot of people's story.
It's a reality.
They're like bouncing around at different churches, but
Yeah.
different from SF.
Different from us.
Colorado's where I met PC.
Yeah.
I had a beard when I was 11 years old.
I believe
it was a
that.
bad dad joke, but anyways, I could sneak in. It's kind of a thing. You didn't sneak in. No, only high schoolers were in the high school group.
Wait, he was youth pastor or young adult pastor?
Youth pastor.
Okay.
So
And you were in his youth group?
yeah, I was like 11 years old sneaking into the high
Wow.
school group. I just wanted to be a part of what was going on. So
What the older kids are doing.
yeah.
So how long have you known PC?
Well, I've known him, for what would that be? It's at least, 24 years for sure, because that's the age of the church. I'd say another, probably 30 years.
Wow.
30 years.
He probably doesn't remember me from the early years.
When you're
but
sneaking in.
Yeah. I was told it was rebellious, heart of rebellion.
So were you here at Highlands when it started?
Not when it started. I got here. So February 4th, 2001 was when the church started. I came in August of that year.
Okay.
And then was here for like a school year. I was an intern and went back home because I was broke and I wanted to get married, save up for a ring. So I went back to Colorado for a year and actually didn't think I was coming back, and then really felt like I was supposed to. So we came on staff in 2003.
Okay.
Church was started in 2001.
Yeah.
So, we're here as an intern for a year, out for about a year.
And what was your first role on staff here? Were you?
I was hired as the worship pastor, but I was also hired as hired for the tape and CD ministry.
Yeah,
it was the tape ministry, and then we were like,
That's
guys,
awesome.
we're going to be so cutting edge.
What's
we're
funny?
adding CDs.
Hey, listen. Here's what's crazy. Just even hearing CDs today, we have this one of our partners with Visitor Reach. We have this app, and it's great. It starts to it helps you pastor people before they ever come to your church.
Yeah, cool.
So they click on an ad or whatever, and you start a conversation. Well, one of the questions that will generate is like, do you need prayer for anything or whatever? And so then they come back, and so I'm sending out all these prayers today, and someone comments back to me, and they said something about our Sundays. Did we put those on CDs?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That was literally today. I was like.
Awesome. And you can
No, we don't.
probably,
I don't think I even have a CD player in my car anymore.
That gives you some good demographic information on that
Yeah.
person, probably, right?
Yeah.
Asking
Oh,
if you
yeah.
have
Yeah.
CDs.
Yeah.
So it's good.
That's awesome.
I think I'm trying to think when I met you. It was back in
was
like
way early.
desperation days.
That was way early.
Yeah. That was a
It would
long
have been like 04, 05. So
Wow.
yeah, good times.
20 years.
Good times. Yeah. So I'm thrilled I'm still around doing it. So doing something
cool.
completely different than when I started. And I think that's kind of the point, of just.
But that's what I've always loved about not just Church of the Highlands, but also like a lot of the art churches is like you may have a certain title or be in a role, but really it's like whatever's needed, anywhere cross functionally. It's like
One of my favorite things, Pastor Mike Burnett said this. He was talking about being more committed to the vision than to your role.
Yeah.
And he talked about holding your title or your job like a sword.
Yeah.
So that when your leader needs to move it to someone else's hand, it doesn't cut you.
Yeah, that's a great picture. I love
Yeah,
that.
hold it like a sword. Hold it with respect. Use it for the time that you have it, but know it that it's not yours as well.
it's great.
I love that.
Yeah. So talk to us about that. How have your roles changed here over your duration?
Yeah. So, it's funny going back to the tape and CD story. I didn't even know that was going to happen until like day one. So, I get here, I sign all my little, back then it was just like one piece of paper. Congratulations, you're on staff, and they're like, oh, and by the way, not only are you here to be a worship pastor, which was my official title, but you're here to, help us set up and tear down. And, we kind of went through all the list of like, this is maybe even aspirational what you're here to do, but this is where the rubber meets the road. So,
Right.
So the majority of my time was actually copying tapes and CDs. And I know it's so funny to talk about that. I don't know how I don't know how it applies to today because it's like defunct, technology. But, the cool thing is we would actually do for visitors at church, we would do same day copies. So that was kind of like a little bit of the hook back then. This is like 01, 02. Okay. Hey, the hook is we'll be duplicating this message. If you're here for the first time, we'd love to give this message to you as a gift. And I'm telling you, people ate it up. So that was so successful early on in church. It was kind of like when giving things away were kind of a new and novel concept, you know?
Well, and there's no such thing
did.
as on demand then either. You guys were doing on demand.
We were kind of doing on demand before.
It's so funny that I'm hearing you say that, and I'm thinking, I'm texting Nathan like this, not really that much anymore, but on Sundays, this past year, I'm like, it's 3:00. Where's the podcast? It's not up yet. It's not up yet. Meanwhile, John's back there,
like
the
opening
tapes.
up all the trays.
Yeah.
So funny. Yeah. So
That's crazy.
I was hired to be the worship pastor, which has been really for about 20 years was my role at Highlands. And so, and I'm really passionate about that subject, you know, and just all things that, and I always wanted to be a worship leader who, you know, kind of pushed other people forward and all that. And that might be why I was able to do it for as long, you know, because honestly, I don't see a whole lot of worship pastors stay in that role for that long period of time. I'm sure that there's lots of others. So, but I think it was just, you know, developing others, you know, pushing people forward, that kind of thing. Lately though, you know, that went into like service programming. So my role kind of shifted into not just am I planning the set list, but how does it all fit together, working with the team to do that? I love that. You know, it's kind of that, you know, that design concept, you know, designing the experience for the person coming on a Sunday. And so that led into now leading production teams for all of our campuses. So I just gave you kind of like a 24-year arc really fast.
That's awesome.
Something I'll never forget this. I probably never have told you this, but I remember being, it was at either an art conference, it was at Grow, it was at Motion, it was something that was big. And it was one of the first times, and this was a long time ago, but it was one of the first times I like looked over and you're standing there during the worship set and you're just smiling. And you're watching the team. And I sat there and I thought, that's a great leader. I thought that. I was like, that's a great leader that doesn't have to be on the stage.
Yeah.
But he's developed these people and he's finding a greater joy in seeing them do this.
Yeah.
I remember that kind of marked me seeing that years ago. And I've always loved that about you, just your heart to develop people and to give other people an opportunity. You don't have to be the guy on the stage.
Well, let me tell you a quick story. And this might be something that you delete from this podcast, wherever it shows up. I actually had somebody speak a word over me when I was 13, and it actually didn't come out the right way, I don't think. And this guy said, "Hey, I think the Lord's telling you, this is a super bummer story. Okay, so take this or leave this." He said, "I think you're going to serve in obscurity." 13-year-old kid. I'm like, what? That's, you know, and that's not. So anyways, kind of messed with me for a little bit, for actually a couple years. And further on down the road, you know, the church was growing. Highlands was busting at the seams. I was living my dream job, the worship pastor of this growing church. And, you know, we had recorded an album, which to me, that was like, I've done it. I've made it, you know, and of course that was younger me thinking that. And I remember driving down the road and I remember it was like the Lord brought that memory of this little word back. And he said, "Hey, do you remember that?" And it kind of almost, I used that as a, you know, it's like when somebody says you can't do something, I don't know, for me, sometimes like, I want to try even harder.
Right.
And the Lord even said, you know, what that really meant is if you're okay with being completely obscure, I'll do anything I want to do with you. It's just that.
Wow.
Awesome.
And then he brought that scripture that's obviously a very famous worship song, Psalm 84:10. You know, better is one day in your courts than 1,000 elsewhere. I'd rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of the wicked. And there's a whole, it's just been such a thing for me. I just want to be, and I'm not trying to puff myself up or anything, but genuinely, I think that's how you can get more people to come to your team if they see that you're just here to
That's great. That's awesome.
do whatever.
You know, there's so many things I feel like we could dive into and talk about with you. On the creative side, the worship side, the relationship between the worship pastor and the lead pastor. One of the things, though, I want to ask as you kind of talk about your journey is you were hired 24 years ago as the worship pastor for a church plant that was 2 years old, a few hundred people.
Yep.
You're still now the worship pastor for the same church 24 years later across 20-something campuses.
26, is it?
I think it's 26.
thousands and thousands of people that are here every Sunday. So I think one of the things that we talk about with organizational leadership and development is that the leader doesn't always rise with the organization.
Right.
And for a lot of people, they might be the right leader for that area for a season.
Yeah.
But then the organization needs to keep going beyond where that leader is able to grow as well. And so
Right.
I'm curious to hear from you. How have you continued to grow
that's a great
as the organization
Yeah.
has grown and as the complexities have grown and the responsibilities have grown? Like, that's a different
that.
leader needed for all of those different
Right.
phases. But you've been the same leader
Yeah.
for that.
Well, I think number one, you just have to be willing to just roll with whatever comes. Going back to, I keep going back to the tapes and CDs. I'm sorry, guys.
I love
'Cause
it.
that's where it all started.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know that when I got here. And I actually went back to Debbie, my wife, who we were newlyweds. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I thought we moved halfway across the country to come lead worship, but I'm actually like the tape CD, and really it's the mailroom guy, you know? And we both collectively said, let's just take it a year at a time. And it was just like, kind of like we just adopted, we're going to be just willing to just try it out, you know? So I think willingness to openness is first, but I think if I could say the most significant part of being able to grow with the organization and to continue to lead it, to influence it, is the whole feedback cycle. I call it the feedback cycle, kind of a cheesy play on music and microphones and all that kind of thing. But I think the ability to accept, give, and create meaningful feedback on anything, doesn't matter if it's music, whatever it is, has what's been the driving factor for me to grow personally.
And that's a big part of Highlands.
Huge part of Highlands. Pastor Chris has always led us in that way, but I think there's a couple things that I would just throw out there, just kind of the way I think about it. I think it has to be, and this is actually based on the scripture, right? Speaking the truth in love. It has to be honest. The truth is honesty, right? So if I'm talking to a worship leader, or maybe it's the lighting design guy, or whatever, creative, whatever part, I have to be honest with my feedback. And I think a lot of times in church, I think you guys would agree, it's hard sometimes when you're trying to build people up, you're trying to encourage people to also then say, hey, that was not good, you know? Mm-hmm. So you have to be honest, but then speaking the truth in love has got to be honoring, and that's just the way I approach feedback. But then I think the third leg of that stool,
Can I say something real quick to that? Like the honesty piece is funny, I think, in church, and we talk about the duality of relationships all the time. It's like friend, pastor, boss, blah, 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 all this stuff. So it is complicated. I get it. But a lot of times we shy away from giving that honest feedback because we don't want to crush them, hurt them, this, that, whatever. But what I've always sensed from guys like you, Mark, Pastor Chris, everyone is, the most loving thing I can do is actually give them this feedback because I want them to grow. I mean, kind of speak to that a little bit before you get to the rest of it.
Yeah, I think back to some of the most formational points in my history have been, honestly, with Pastor Chris in his office, where he was saying, don't ever do that again. And he said it that way. And, that depending on where you are at relationally with somebody, that makes a big difference. But I think that's my point would be, even the third part of it that makes it easier for you to have that honesty is that it's consistent. So it's honest, honoring, and consistent.
That's great.
And if I know that, and I mean consistent good, consistent corrective.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So those times when I had those corrective feedback moments, I was already standing on a strong foundation of, this person loves me and is for me.
Yeah.
And he or she, whatever the case may be, is not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. And I want people to feel that way when I'm talking to them. Yeah. So I think the honesty thing, we shy away from that, maybe because we haven't invested relationally enough.
That's great.
In the people that we're working with. But if they know John's not going anywhere, he truly cares for me, then I can be, not brutally is not the right word. Radically.
Radical candor.
Radical candor. I can be, and I think that's the point of that book too, is just you build this relational foundation with people.
Yeah.
And so I think I know Pastor Chris has been extremely consistent
Yeah.
with me, and I'm grateful to be under a phenomenal leader like that, you know, and he's given me he's told me when it's been amazing and he's told me when it's been awful. And but I think I've grown more from the corrective.
Yeah.
But I don't think I could have grown as fast as, you know, the Lord would want me to grow if I wasn't able to have that relational connection.
What does that
That's
feedback loop look like on a weekend? Let's say, you know, someone's leading, singing, playing, whatever. What is that?
So we value instantaneous feedback. So let's take it from from a service experience. I mean, it's after every service, literally.
Before the next one happens.
Before the next one happens. And we don't have to say it anymore. We have, you know, the director cutting all the camera shots. We have audio engineers. We have key worship leaders. All of the key people that we just all show up, and we're all just like ready to go, you know, like kind of ready to pivot. Because that's just a muscle we've developed. So I think
that's great.
I think specific feedback instantaneously, is really key. So, and driving down into like the weeds on stuff. Like,
do you guys have a framework that you use to go through it, or is it just like?
I think it's more area by area. I would say, and I think we'd kind of go through. Okay, what in the message? That's what I love about Pastor Chris's leadership, Pastor Mark, his leadership. And really, honestly, most of the communicators that we have come through Highlands are like, "Hey, is there anything? What are you hearing?"
They're proactive and
there's like an
seeking it.
open it,
which is so much easier to give in an environment like that.
Absolutely. So if you're welcoming it first, and again, I think that's a muscle you have to build.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be area by area, but I think it's also just like, I mean, as quick as we can get onto it.
Yeah.
And I would say, don't be scared to just dive. Like, let's do a deep dive.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we did a B minor 7 on that, but you know what? It's actually a D over B. Or
like
you
that
could use the Nashville numbers as whatever. You know, I know there's people that will listen that like, well, they're thinking about numbers, but like non-musicians would be like, probably don't even really feel the difference.
Yeah.
But it's just that, it's like that. It's not even the last 5%. It's probably the last like 0.5%, you know?
I'm curious, you've said a few times as you're talking about it, it's a muscle you have to build.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, you know, if there's new people who are joining your team who they don't have that muscle. Yeah. How do you train them to step into it?
I love that you asked that, because we actually start talking about that being a value of our team pretty much from the beginning of their volunteer or maybe a new staff member position. Like, hey, just so you know, like if I'm taking somebody new back into the green room, I'm orienting them to, hey, just so you know, we're going to go back and this is going to happen. And you might be shocked at how, like I said before, how deep we dive into something. That's good. It's what we do. And isn't this exciting that we get to be a part of it? So you kind of have to be like,
so when they sign up, you're letting them know, hey, this is what you're signing up for.
Absolutely.
Essentially.
Well, but I like using that. I love the way you framed that, because when I have to tell, let's just say, and we all know, I'm a vocalist and an instrumentalist. Vocalists are the hardest people to work with, in my opinion. Okay. Sorry for whoever's listening to this. Okay. I can say that because I am one, and I've got a theory on why. We won't get into that, but say they've had a bad day. They come in, they're emotional, they're moody, they showed up late, and it's all over them. They're up on the platform. They're representing, I mean, let's go ahead and say probably representing Jesus to somebody who just walked into this church for the first time, and they look like they've, their cat died that morning or whatever, So I like to be able to say, remember you signed up for this to your comment. Yeah. Because we even say, if you're saying that consistently at the very beginning, like, hey, this is great. We're so excited that you're here part of this worship team, or you stepped onto this production team. Let me just tell you some parts about our team. And you package it in vision, you package it in joy, excitement, energy. Then when the rubber meets the road and you actually have to have a corrective conversation, sometimes it's good to be able to say, now remember we talked about this, we didn't sign you up, you signed up.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, that's helped us a lot.
Yeah.
And so I think your orientation of team into the feedback loop, that cycle of just that environment is really important.
Do you find, have you guys, I'm sure you have, but have you found people that because of their maybe family of origin or their previous church experience, they come at it, and to use PC's words, you don't see things as they are, you see things as you are.
Yes.
So they're bringing with them some of that hurt, baggage, or whatever,
Absolutely.
and then they get into this culture of feedback, and they're not hearing feedback, they're hearing
Yeah, totally.
criticism or
Yeah.
something, you know?
But in that, I mean, and even in the orienting them to this, I think when you can exhibit it, or you can create an example with somebody who is like a longtime leader, like you guys have worked together for a long time. Mm-hmm. So somebody coming into an environment where you're giving feedback or whatever way, and it's actually it can be intense, but loving and honoring and all of that kind of thing. Them seeing that, I think,
Yeah.
and seeing the consistency of, we're not going anywhere. I just think it's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
That's great.
but yes, people approach, I mean, there's an automatic with most, I would say, in my experience, most people fear feedback
Yeah.
Yeah.
at some level.
Yeah.
And
I know for me, if you're familiar with the Enneagram, I'm a 1 on the Enneagram.
let's go.
The perfectionist.
I don't even think I have a wing.
Yeah.
I think
pure
I'm just,
one-
I'm
one
just
wing.
pure one, and bless everybody who has to deal with me.
So when someone, I remember early on when you would give me feedback or other people would, it didn't feel like you were helping me get better. It felt like an attack on my identity in a way.
Yep.
Because I want to be good. I want to be right.
Yep.
And I remember having to learn giving feedback is uncomfortable at times. So if you're willing to make yourself uncomfortable to share something with me that's going to make me better, that's actually a really loving thing of you to do, to
Yes.
make yourself uncomfortable
Yeah.
so that I can get better.
Yeah.
And I had to honestly like reframe my perspective around feedback.
Right.
And when I started to see it in that way, is like, to your point, hey, he's not going anywhere
Yeah.
just because I did something wrong, and
Right.
he's sharing that feedback with me.
Right.
It's actually the most loving thing you can do as a leader in that time.
And I would suggest that if you're going to lead really in any area of ministry, business, I think this goes anywhere, but I think specifically when we're creatives, we're artists, we got the next Sunday, we have to plan, the pressure, it's so easy for the craft to take all of our inquiry, our curiosity, the craft of whatever we're doing, playing piano, video, fill in the blank. And I think as leaders, we need to be like, our primary curiosity needs to be the people that are doing this with us.
Yeah.
So to your point, like
great.
Enneagram 1, I need to know what, an Enneagram 1 or a golden retriever on whatever personality, whatever it is, just have that curiosity that I'm actually, my touchdown is not the song, the video, the sermon, the whatever. It's the people that I'm doing it with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and then
great.
that seeps out into the team. And then what ends up happening is you attract greater talent. You attract people that seeps out,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, they talk about, everything leaks, you got to keep,
Right.
but sometimes you want the good things about what's happening to leak too.
Yeah.
Cause that creates this interest in what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think that was a lot part of the Highlands worship experience was the fact that we were, that we were really interested in developing people, and it was really kind of ugly and hard, at times. We had some bumps along the road, had people that weren't good musicians, whatever, but it was the effort into it. And all of a sudden you just start getting these people that, that actually really can crush it,
Yeah.
whatever it is. And
Yeah.
so,
That's great.
Hey, we have this phrase that we say, equipped through the dip, right?
Yeah.
And so
that's good.
talk about that a bit. I mean, Highlands has such a high standard of excellence.
It's unreal.
It's incredible. But you also have this incredible culture of development and giving people an opportunity.
Well,
And sometimes those things can,
That's exactly what I was wanting
I'm
to ask
thankful
next.
that the internet was not developed enough in 2003, 4, 5, 6, and 7 to really post worship sets on, and sermons online. I'm just thankful for that.
Yeah.
Only on cassettes.
Only on cassettes, tapes or CDs, right? Because we've had some blowouts. I mean, just awful moments, you know. I mean, there was one time where the worship band was so bad that after the first song that we just stumbled through, Pastor Chris just said, "Hey, we're going to do something." He came up on stage. We wasn't playing. We're going to do something a little bit different today. We're going to dive straight into the word, you know.
No,
thanks, guys.
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah. Hey, thanks, guys. We're going to just change it up a little bit, you know, because it was so bad, you know. So I think people do see that element of Highlands.
Yeah.
I think inevitably in every organization, whether it's business or ministry or church or whatever, you have to go through those growing pains of you have to mess up. And we try to minimize that as much as possible now, you know, but man, we had some pretty huge.
You want to hear a good
mishaps.
one for us?
I love
This recently.
This is top of mind for me.
Yeah, a couple of Sundays ago, our church is under a year old, so you know, we could not get any of our drummers. They were all like scheduled out or traveling or whatever. Well, at the last minute, we find this drummer that we paid to come and play. Right?
Yeah.
So no one knew this guy. I mean, we heard that he was a good drummer, but it was like
rolls in fresh on Sunday morning.
We're like fingers crossed
for the first time.
Yeah. So countdown clock's going. It's like 40 seconds. The band's all up there, and I make eye contact with the worship leader, and he's like, "I don't know where the drummer is." And I look at him. We're all like, "Where's the drummer?"
Oh my gosh.
We can't find the drummer, and we're like, "Roll the countdown clock again." They rolled again. How many times they rolled the countdown
They
clock?
rolled it 3 times.
I love it.
He was in the bathroom.
That's amazing.
He goes and finds him in the bathroom, like, dude, we get on the stage.
He's like,
church.
oh, okay.
He's running down the hall. No, he finally got moving down the hall because he ran past
Took
me.
a while.
I made eye contact with him, like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna kill you.
Yeah.
You're ruining this church service.
I love that. That's part of like what just needs to happen.
Yeah.
It's going to, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's one of the things that we want to encourage like pastors with. Like, yes, we're doing our very best to pursue excellence.
Yeah.
But things are going to happen. You learn. You know, you equip to the dip.
Yeah. So I'll ask you this: how do you keep your standard while still finding spaces to develop people?
That's good.
Yeah, I think as we grew, we did start to see where we needed to create other opportunities.
Yeah.
So relieve some of the pressure off the weekend service or whatever it is. So for us, it was like Wednesday nights were the new develop time, you know.
Is it at first Wednesday?
It was every Wednesday back in the day, you know. But then really, you know, as we grew, Sunday morning sound check, if we're going to talk specifically like Sunday service, that became more of the, you know, let's put all the elements together. And then any midweek rehearsal, and this goes for our production teams too, would be all instructional, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you'd have so we created environments in midweek rehearsals with current team members to just have this, you know, and it works with musicians. A little harder with production.
Yeah.
It's not the same concept, but you know, it's that woodshed kind of concept with musicians. They love to get together. You know, they love to talk shop, talk gear. You know, you can always tell when you're around a gearhead. And so you put them together in those instructional times, even when they're playing and helping each other. And I'm talking specifically worship and production. That was super helpful in the midweek. Counted as small groups. I mean, we tried to get it into every part of church programming we could get.
Yeah.
You know,
that's great.
We did coffee and music. So cheesy, but just, you know, I think it was called Musicians and Coffee was one of our longest running small groups. And so we would do a development rehearsal. So this is with people that weren't on the team. They wouldn't be platformed on the weekend yet. We'd do it and then go to the local coffee place and hang out till 1 a.m., you know, that night. Of course, I was a lot younger then too, but it was just that community.
Yeah.
And then it was the ability to work on your craft without the pressure of the weekend happening.
That's great.
It's great.
Right in front of you. And when we figured that out, that helped us.
Yeah.
It took us a couple of years to figure that part out, but that's what really helped, I think, building the excellence that people see when they look at a Church of the Highlands service.
Yeah.
You know, something we were listening to someone that's on your team earlier. They were talking about this framework. I can't remember exactly the words, but we looked at each other like, that's a great framework.
Yeah.
I think you even wrote it down because we'll steal it.
Yeah.
But how do you guys at Highlands, how do you choose songs? Because I've heard Pastor Chris many times share his, I don't know if the word's concern or what, but of how many songs here in the last decade plus have been really focused sort of on us rather than on God. So how do you guys choose that, like the song set? What's that framework like? And what's the approval process?
So we still submit our set lists to, via email, just a quick email or sometimes a text to whoever's running the weekend, that particular weekend. That's the approval. We want to be under the pastoral covering.
Yeah.
We don't want to roll out there and just.
That's great.
So I think that's important. And I see a lot of breakdown many times between senior pastor and worship team there. But I think when it comes to choosing songs, it is, there's definitely a horizontal understanding of typically that first, that, it is the call to worship. Enter his courts with thanksgiving. And Thanksgiving is not just all, God, I love you. It's not this intimate connection. It's actually more party. So like when you go to a party, you're like, isn't this awesome?
Yeah.
Right? Isn't this cool?
Yeah.
This is amazing. It's like we're celebrating what God has done, his plan for our lives, all of those things. And then you take it into that more vertical orientation, which is now, okay, we've done that. Now it's like, this is between me and God. Mm-hmm. And we want the worship experience to become gradually less obvious to the person worshiping.
Oh,
yeah.
In other words, we come in, it's lights flashing, it's all the fun things. That's party, that's horizontal. But as we enter into the throne room of God, all of a sudden, everything else needs to kind of disappear.
Yeah.
And we need to be focused in on. So that makes I'm kind of rolling off the set list topic, but that helps you make creative decisions with production. So your video content, lighting content. It helps you make decisions on songs for sure. Even mix, it's like, it's the C.S. Lewis quote, which I always mess up, but it's like the best church service is the one that you're unaware of.
Yeah.
It's great.
That's the brief, that's the ultimate goal. And then with every song, we want it to be, when the church comes together, when you see it, let me say it this way. When you see glimpses of heaven in Isaiah and Revelation and all the other places in the Bible, nobody's singing about themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
And the church is going to be that. And so we think we have a strong conviction that when we're gathered as the church, we kind of need to flow in that holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty.
Yeah.
We're not singing about ourselves.
Exactly. Those songs though are amazing and are needed, and they're all throughout the book of Psalms. Mm-hmm. So there is a spiritual component to those songs that go deep into the thread, the framework and the fabric of Christian life. So it's not bad to sing about what God's doing for you personally. Right. It's just what's the placement of it?
Yeah, that's great.
That's
fantastic. Pastor John, this has been amazing.
I loved it. I hate that we're out of time already.
There's so many questions we haven't gotten to, so that just means we'll have to do a part 2
we have to have you back on here.
Okay,
yeah.
That's great. I love talking church now. That's my favorite topic.
Well, I tell you what, you have, I'll finish with this. You have been faithful here, and I've got to have a front row seat watching you for all these years, faithfully serve someone else's vision, and then watch in humility, like you have this humble spirit about you, but watch God do something in and through you to raise up an army of worshipers and worship leaders and build a culture that is just, literally it's impacting churches around the world, people around the world.
Thanks.
So
that's awesome.
We love you, man.
Love y'all too. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.